After about time I got into the locker room and everybody started complaining. Man, I can't believe he did this.
For years, many boxing legends resented Mike Tyson because of his violent behavior outside the ring and his reputation as a bully who crumbled against elite competition. However, word is that Evander Holyfield, the man who beat Tyson twice and had his ear bitten off, has finally addressed the Tyson hate and what he said would change the dynamics of their relationship. The collision course. Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield first crossed paths in 1984 when Tyson was training under Cus D'Amato in Catskill, New York, while Holyfield had just won bronze at the Los Angeles Olympics. The two young fighters sparred together during this period, with Holyfield at 22 years old and Tyson only 18.
I wasn't afraid of nobody. Yeah, because my mama said, the only way you're going to lose when you don't take no chance to win.
That sparring session planted a seed that would grow over the next decade. During their time in the ring together, Holyfield noticed something significant about Tyson's fighting style. Although it was undeniably aggressive and powerful, it was also remarkably predictable. By using rhythm and movement to counter Tyson's charging attacks, Holyfield discovered that he never felt the fear that paralyzed so many other fighters. Rather than seeing an unbeatable force, he viewed Tyson as a bully, which fundamentally changed how he approached their eventual professional encounters. This early observation would prove crucial a decade later when the two men finally met for a world title. Meanwhile, Tyson's rise through professional boxing was nothing short of meteoric. After turning pro in 1985, he became the youngest heavyweight champion in history by 1986 at just 20 years old. Within a year, he had unified the WBA, WBC, and IBF titles, and by 1989, his record stood at an imposing 37-0 with 33 knockouts. The media dubbed him the baddest man on the planet, and for good reason. No one seemed capable of standing up to his ferocious power. Holyfield, in contrast, took a more gradual path to heavyweight supremacy. He first captured the cruiserweight title before moving up in weight class, and in 1990, he defeated Buster Douglas to claim the heavyweight championship. Notably, this was the same Buster Douglas who had just shocked the world by knocking out Tyson in Tokyo, which meant Holyfield now held a title that Tyson desperately wanted back. Given the circumstances, a fight between Tyson and Holyfield seemed inevitable, and indeed, promoters had scheduled it for 1990. However, Tyson's shocking loss to Douglas derailed those plans, and his subsequent legal troubles pushed the matchup even further into the future. In 1992, he was convicted of 18-year-old Desiree Washington during the Indiana Black Expo, a crime for which he served 3 years in prison. As a result, a highly anticipated fight kept getting delayed while both men's careers continued on separate trajectories. During Tyson's incarceration, Holyfield remained active in the ring but faced his own challenges. He lost the heavyweight title, regained it, then lost it again, all while battling heart problems that led doctors to recommend retirement. Despite this medical advice, Holyfield refused to walk away from the sport. Instead, he kept training and kept waiting for the opportunity to face Tyson that he knew would eventually come. When Tyson was released from prison in 1995, he quickly set about rebuilding his reputation with 2 warm-up bouts, knocking out Frank Bruno and Bruce Seldon in dominant fashion. The boxing world assumed that Tyson was back to his old self, and promoters finally scheduled the long-awaited Holyfield fight for November 9th, 1996. The oddsmakers were not kind to Holyfield, installing him as a 25-1 underdog. According to conventional wisdom, nobody believed the aging former champion could compete with Tyson's devastating power and legendary speed. The assumption was that Tyson would overwhelm him quickly, just as he had done to so many others before his prison sentence. But what the oddsmakers failed to account for was that Holyfield had never been scared of Mike Tyson, not since that first sparring session 12 years earlier.
Wild miss by Tyson. Good defensive tactics here by Holyfield.
When the fight began, Holyfield executed the strategy he'd been developing since their sparring days together. He used clinches to neutralize Tyson's power, while landing body shots to drain his stamina. And most importantly, he stood directly in front of Tyson and refused to back down. This psychological warfare proved just as effective as his physical tactics, and by the 6th round, Holyfield had accomplished what few thought possible. He knocked Tyson down.
Let's take a look at him. I didn't see much. And here comes the knockdown. Now, the knockdown is a surprise to, I think, everybody.
With a shot in the chest.
As the fight progressed into the later rounds, Tyson's limitations became increasingly apparent. By the 10th round, he was visibly exhausted. His punches had lost their characteristic snap, and his movement had slowed considerably. Holyfield, sensing his opponent's fatigue, kept pressing the attack relentlessly. Then, in the 11th round, Holyfield landed a series of devastating combinations that sent Tyson staggering across the ring, prompting the referee to stop the fight.
Champion of the world, Evander, the real deal.
Against all odds, the 25-1 underdog had emerged victorious. Beyond the result itself, this fight mattered because it exposed a fundamental truth about Tyson that many in boxing had long suspected. When he faced someone who refused to be intimidated by his fearsome reputation, he had no backup plan to fall back on. His entire fighting style depended on instilling fear in his opponents, and when that fear failed to materialize, Tyson himself failed. In the aftermath of the fight, Holyfield described Tyson as a bully, and he credited his mother with teaching him how to handle such opponents. Growing up in Alabama under strict discipline, his mother, Annie Laura Ratliff, had instilled in him the belief that fear is not a feeling, but rather a choice about how to act. She taught him that crying doesn't help, and that taking chances is the only path to success. The bite and the breakdown. Following his stunning upset victory, Holyfield agreed to give Tyson a rematch, which was scheduled for June 28, 1997. Promoters dubbed the event The Sound and the Fury, recognizing the intensity that both fighters would bring to their second encounter. Tyson was desperate for revenge, while Holyfield wanted to prove definitively that the first fight wasn't merely a fluke. From the opening bell, however, the fight began badly for Tyson. Once again, Holyfield controlled the action by employing the same tactics that had worked so effectively in their first meeting, clinching to smother Tyson's offense, targeting the body to sap his energy, and counterpunching to capitalize on his aggressive lunges. As the rounds progressed, Tyson grew increasingly frustrated with his inability to land clean shots, and he began complaining bitterly to the referee about what he perceived as intentional headbutts from Holyfield. The referee examined the situation, but ruled the head contact accidental. Then came the third round, which would become one of the most infamous moments in sports history.
You look at it slow motion, we clinch, and you know what? You put your head like this, I did my head like this, so it's like you can see that I'm putting my ear, it's like I'm setting myself up.
In a moment that shocked viewers around the world, Tyson bit Holyfield's right ear, tearing off a chunk of cartilage in the process. Referee Mills Lane immediately stopped the action and deducted 2 points from Tyson for the flagrant foul. After consulting with ringside officials, Lane allowed the fight to resume, apparently believing that Tyson's momentary lapse in judgment wouldn't be repeated. He was wrong. Within moments of the restart, Tyson bit Holyfield's left ear as well.
Well, yeah, he bit me twice.
He bit you twice.
He bit me when we went back in and he thought I was going to be scared. Then he seen I caught him with these 2 shots. Then he bit me again. I think after about time I got into the locker room and everybody started complaining. Man, I can't believe he did this. I said, look, did he bite you? They said, no, okay. I said, he bit me, right? And I said, now, I'm going to forgive him.
This time, Lane had no choice but to disqualify Tyson and end the fight immediately. What followed was pure chaos, as the crowd erupted in anger and disbelief while Tyson attempted to attack Holyfield's corner before security personnel intervened to restore order. The consequences of Tyson's actions were swift and severe. The Nevada State Athletic Commission fined him $3 million and revoked his boxing license, requiring him to wait 15 months before he could even apply for reinstatement. The incident became known as the Bite Fight, and it remains one of the most notorious moments in the history of professional sports. For many observers within the boxing community, this moment confirmed their worst suspicions about Mike Tyson. He wasn't just aggressive or intimidating in the way that many successful fighters are. Rather, he was fundamentally unstable and dangerous in ways that transcended the boundaries of sport itself. However, Holyfield saw something different when he reflected on what had happened that night. In interviews conducted years after the incident, Holyfield explained what he believed was really going through Tyson's mind during those fateful moments. According to Holyfield, Tyson was desperate to escape from a fight he knew he was losing, but he couldn't bring himself to quit in the conventional sense. The bite, therefore, wasn't an act of aggression, but rather an escape route, a way to end the fight without having to admit surrender.
Do it over again, would you do it over again? No, yeah, probably do the same thing, because he was really kicking my ass. Because he was really kicking my ass and bumping my head and stuff. And yeah, I think I would do it again. Yeah, I would. I'm sorry, guys. But I am kind of redeeming myself.
The ear incident damaged Tyson's reputation in ways that his previous controversies had not managed to accomplish. His assault conviction had divided public opinion largely along racial lines, with many supporters believing he had been treated unfairly by the justice system. His bizarre threats against opponents had been dismissed by many as mere promotional hype designed to sell pay-per-view buys. But biting an opponent's ear during a championship fight was something that nobody could excuse, explain away, or rationalize. It's important to understand that boxing is already a violent sport by its very design. Every fighter who steps into the ring accepts the inherent risks of being punched, cut, bruised, and seriously hurt. They accept these dangers because the sport has established rules that place limits on the potential damage, creating a framework within which controlled violence can occur safely. When Tyson bit Holyfield, he violated those foundational rules in the most primitive way imaginable, stepping completely outside the bounds of sport and into something far more disturbing. Some analysts subsequently viewed the biting incident as symbolic of Tyson's entire career trajectory. Early dominance fueled entirely by fear and aggression, followed inevitably by collapse when those psychological tools proved insufficient against opponents who possessed equal skill and greater discipline. Holyfield had shattered Tyson's mystique in their first fight by refusing to be intimidated, and in their second fight, Tyson essentially shattered himself by revealing the limitations of his mental game. The roots of resentment. Understanding why boxing legends resented Mike Tyson requires looking beyond any single incident, no matter how dramatic. Instead, we must examine the accumulation of controversies that followed Tyson throughout his entire career. Controversies that progressively alienated his peers and damaged his standing within the tight-knit boxing community. Tyson's aggressive persona was carefully constructed on a foundation of intimidation that extended far beyond the normal trash talk expected in combat sports. His statements weren't merely provocative in the way that Muhammad Ali's famous taunts had been. Rather, they were designed to genuinely terrify anyone who might face him. After defeating Lou Savarez in just 38 seconds during June 2000, Tyson grabbed the microphone from the ring announcer and delivered one of his most infamous rants. "I want your heart. I want to eat his children. Praise be to Allah." This particular outburst was directed at Lennox Lewis, whom Tyson hoped to fight next for the heavyweight championship. While the language was clearly calculated to generate maximum shock value and media attention, it also crossed boundaries that made many veterans of the sport deeply uncomfortable. Boxing purists who valued sportsmanship and discipline above all else viewed these statements as damning evidence of a fighter who had lost control of himself. They drew unfavorable comparisons to Muhammad Ali, who had also talked plenty of trash during his legendary career, but whose taunts were characterized by wit and theatrical flair. Tyson's threats, by contrast, felt genuinely dangerous. They felt like warnings about what he might actually do rather than entertainment designed to sell tickets. Moreover, these disturbing statements accumulated steadily over time, creating a pattern that concerned observers found increasingly impossible to ignore. Tyson spoke of throwing punches so hard they would make opponents' children born dizzy. He talked openly about wanting to rip out hearts and stomachs. He discussed wanting to kill people with what seemed like genuine enthusiasm. In October 2000, while promoting an upcoming fight against Andrew Galata, he told assembled reporters that he was taking Zoloft specifically to keep me from killing y'all. Tyson's real-life violence, unfortunately, extended well beyond his boxing career and into his everyday existence. In 1988, he fought Mitch Green on a Harlem street corner in a confrontation that led to multiple lawsuits. In 1999, he assaulted 2 motorists following a minor traffic accident, an offense for which he served 9 months in jail. As recently as 2022, at 55 years old, He punched a passenger on a JetBlue flight who had been persistently harassing him throughout the journey. Of all his controversies, however, the 1992 assault conviction represented the most significant rupture in Tyson's standing with the boxing community. Desiree Washington, an 18-year-old Miss Black America contestant, testified that Tyson had pinned her down in his hotel room and forced himself on her despite her repeated protests. Medical evidence introduced at trial showed vaginal abrasions consistent with forced penetration, and witnesses described Washington as appearing dazed and deeply shocked in the immediate aftermath of the encounter. Tyson maintained his innocence throughout the trial and has continued to do so ever since. He insisted that the encounter was entirely consensual and that Washington had known exactly what to expect when she accompanied him to his room late at night. His defense team attempted to portray Washington as a calculating woman, primarily interested in extracting money from a wealthy celebrity. Despite these efforts, the jury convicted him on 1 count of assault and 2 counts of criminal deviate conduct, sentencing him to 6 years in prison, of which he served 3. Nevertheless, for many figures within the boxing world, the conviction merely confirmed suspicions they had harbored privately for years. Former trainer Teddy Atlas had confronted teenage Tyson at gunpoint years before the Washington incident over alleged sexual misconduct toward Atlas's 11-year-old niece. That earlier confrontation had led directly to Atlas's departure from Tyson's training camp. The conviction suggested that whatever problematic tendencies had manifested during Tyson's youth had never been properly addressed or treated. Adding another troubling layer to his public image, domestic abuse allegations from Tyson's first wife, actress Robin Givens, attracted intense media scrutiny. Givens publicly described their brief marriage as torture, pure hell during a memorable 1988 interview with Barbara Walters. She alleged that Tyson had shaken her, pushed her, and swung at her on multiple occasions. She described incidents in which he threw furniture across rooms and made death threats that left her fearing for her life. The marriage lasted only about a year before ending in a bitter and very public divorce. When asked about these allegations, Tyson acknowledged that the relationship had been extremely volatile, but denied that he was the sole aggressor in their conflicts. He admitted to mutual physical altercations without accepting full responsibility for the violence. The public never learned the complete truth about what happened inside their marriage, but the allegations further darkened an already troubling public image. The overrated question. Beyond the personal controversies that plagued his career, a separate and equally contentious debate has followed Mike Tyson from his fighting days into his retirement. The fundamental question of whether he was actually overrated as a boxer. This ongoing debate centers primarily on Tyson's performance against elite-level competition. While his early career was undoubtedly marked by spectacular and devastating knockouts, critics point out that his opponents during that dominant period were often aging veterans well past their prime or second-tier contenders who never truly belonged in the same ring with him. When Tyson eventually faced the genuinely best fighters of his generation, the results tell a very different story. He lost to Buster Douglas, he lost twice to Evander Holyfield, and he lost decisively to Lennox Lewis. Perhaps most tellingly, he never managed to avenge any of these defeats. Sports analyst Paul Dempsey went so far as to call Tyson the most overrated boxer in the history of the sport, citing his inability to recover from setbacks and his consistently poor showings against truly elite opponents. According to Dempsey's analysis, Tyson's enormous height was built almost entirely on spectacular knockouts against inferior competition rather than on any sustained excellence against the best fighters of his era. Other knowledgeable voices within boxing have made similar arguments over the years. They emphasize that Tyson's genuine prime as a fighter was remarkably brief, lasting essentially only from 1986 to 1990, a span of just 4 years. When his mentor Cus D'Amato died in 1985, Tyson lost the only truly stabilizing influence he had ever known in his chaotic life. When he fired his trainer Kevin Rooney in 1988, he lost the technical guidance that had refined his raw, natural power into a genuinely effective and sophisticated fighting style. Everything that came after those pivotal losses, both personal and professional, represented a steady and irreversible decline. The Buster Douglas fight in February 1990 exposed every single one of Tyson's hidden vulnerabilities for the world to see. By all credible accounts, Tyson entered that historic fight woefully unprepared. He had been partying instead of training seriously. His corner team lacked basic supplies like ice packs to reduce swelling between rounds, and his preparation was so deficient that he clearly didn't take Douglas seriously as a threat. Douglas, meanwhile, was fighting with intense motivation following his mother's recent death, and he delivered the performance of his lifetime. Throughout the fight, Douglas used his superior jab to keep Tyson at distance, preventing him from launching the devastating close-range attacks that had destroyed so many previous opponents. He absorbed Tyson's best punches and kept coming forward despite the damage. Then, in the 10th round, Douglas landed combinations that knocked Tyson down for the first time in his professional career. Tyson was counted out while fumbling desperately for his mouthpiece, and the most shocking upset in boxing history was complete. In many meaningful ways, the Douglas loss represented the true and permanent end of Mike Tyson's prime. Everything that came afterward, regardless of occasional flashes of his former brilliance, was essentially an extended attempt to recapture something that was already irretrievably gone. His prison sentence interrupted his career for 3 crucial years, during what should have been his physical peak. The Holyfield fights proved conclusively that he could no longer dominate elite competition the way he once had. The Lewis fight confirmed beyond any reasonable doubt that his permanent decline was both real and irreversible. Holyfield himself addressed this complex dynamic in various interviews over the years. Notably, he never called Tyson overrated, and he readily acknowledged Tyson's considerable power and natural fighting ability. At the same time, however, he made abundantly clear that he never felt intimidated because he recognized the significant limitations in Tyson's game. Tyson relied on instilling fear in his opponents as much as he relied on his actual boxing ability, and against opponents who refused to be frightened, his strategies consistently broke down. Redemption and reconciliation. Despite everything that happened between them in the ring, including 2 brutal fights and one of the most infamous moments in sports history, the story of Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield did not end with the bite. The path to reconciliation began publicly in 2009 when Holyfield appeared on Oprah Winfrey's show and formally forgave Tyson for biting his ears during their second fight. During this emotional conversation, they discussed the incident openly and honestly for the first time. Holyfield explained that he had never harbored genuine hatred toward Tyson because he understood that Tyson had acted out of desperation rather than malice. For his part, Tyson expressed what appeared to be sincere and heartfelt remorse for his actions. 4 years later, in 2013, the 2 former rivals appeared together in a Foot Locker commercial that quickly became a viral sensation.
I'm sorry, Evander. It's your ear.
My ear.
I kept that in formaldehyde.
The premise was brilliantly simple. Tyson shows up at Holyfield's door to return the missing piece of ear, which he has preserved in a jar of formaldehyde. The commercial worked precisely because both men were willing to laugh publicly at the most infamous moment of their storied rivalry, and it humanized them in ways that their brutal fighting careers never had. Since that commercial aired, they have continued to strengthen their unlikely friendship. They have collaborated together on podcasts, appeared side by side at sporting events and charity functions, and expressed mutual respect and affection in numerous public forums. When asked about their relationship, Holyfield has consistently emphasized that their rivalry was always purely professional rather than personal. He has declined multiple offers for a third fight, explaining that he would prefer to preserve their friendship rather than risk damaging it in the ring. For his part, Tyson has spoken about Holyfield with genuine affection and appreciation for his willingness to forgive. This remarkable reconciliation reflects a broader pattern in Tyson's post-boxing life, as he has worked steadily to mend relationships with many of the people he wronged or alienated during his turbulent fighting years. He reconciled with former promoter Don King through a heartfelt phone apology, effectively ending years of bitter legal hostilities between them. He attempted a reconciliation with former trainer Teddy Atlas, though that effort proved less successful than his rapprochement with Holyfield. Throughout this period, he's acknowledged his past mistakes publicly and repeatedly, taking responsibility in ways he never did during his fighting career. Tyson's redemption arc has also encompassed significant personal growth, including therapy, family focus, and successful new business ventures. He married his current wife, Lakia Spicer, in 2009, and has credited her with helping him achieve the stability that eluded him throughout most of his adult life. With 7 children to support and guide, he has spoken movingly about the importance of being present for them in ways that his own absent father never was for him. He has discussed his mental health challenges openly, including his ongoing struggles with depression and past suicidal thoughts, helping to destigmatize these issues for his many fans. His post-boxing business ventures have centered primarily on the cannabis industry. In 2018, he launched Tyson Ranch, an enterprise promoting marijuana products for therapeutic purposes. He uses cannabis personally for pain management related to the considerable physical damage he accumulated during his boxing career. In 2025, he advanced to the position of CEO at Karma Hold Co., a celebrity cannabis branding company. However, this business venture has faced significant challenges, including a federal lawsuit filed in December 2025, accusing former partners of systematic fraud. His media career has flourished through the Hot Boxin' with Mike Tyson podcast, which features wide-ranging interviews with celebrities, athletes, and intellectuals from various fields. The podcast format allows Tyson to display a thoughtful, introspective side of his personality that his fighting career largely obscured from public view. Guests have frequently praised his genuine curiosity about ideas and his surprisingly high emotional intelligence. Tyson has also maintained connections to boxing through carefully selected exhibition bouts. In November 2024, at 58 years old, he fought YouTube personality Jake Paul in a heavily criticized exhibition match that ended in defeat for the former champion. Critics questioned whether such events exploited his legendary status and potentially endangered his health at an advanced age for boxing. Supporters countered that he had every right to make his own decisions about how to spend his remaining years in the spotlight. In January 2026, Tyson announced ambitious plans for additional exhibitions, including a highly publicized potential fight with Floyd Mayweather and a rematch with Jake Paul. He has stated publicly that he intends to continue fighting for as long as people are willing to pay to watch him perform. Simultaneously, he has been touring with a one-man stage show called Return of the Mic, which was filmed for an upcoming Netflix special that promises to offer unprecedented insight into his remarkable life story. Click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this.